Did you hear the little pitter patter of rain this morning as we were waking up? It was great.
No, when I woke up this morning, there was nothing.
Oh. I was hoping that there was going to be some rain while we were recording today and that it would everybody would get that sense of the pitter patter that comes down when it rains. That's that lovely sound. But it rained off and on all day and then it's done tonight. Welcome to the Wandering RV Podcast, your bi-weekly source for our stories,
Our screw-ups.
and our successes living the full-time RV life. I'm your host, Kara, the Wandering RV Babe, and this is my driver, Ryan.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening.
You covered all the bases,
Well, you
all
know,
the times of day. What if somebody's listening at 2 a.m.? You didn't say goodnight?
well, they should be sleeping.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's true. That's true. If it's 2 a.m., you should be asleep.
So where are we at, baby?
We're in Austin still.
Why are we still in Austin?
You know this. We like to stay in places longer. I mean, we work during the week, and so we only get to explore the area on the weekends. So if we're only staying in a place for 1 or 2 weeks, then it's a really quick turnaround on what all we get to do.
I agree, and I think Austin is a great place to be spending our time because we are foodies and boozies.
That's a thing now. That's a thing. Foodies and boozies.
So what are we drinking tonight, babe?
We are drinking the Marg Thatcher, which is a little fun adulty beverage that we actually came up with.
We did. We were in Philadelphia hanging out at Manatani Stillworks, and we were drinking to our life's content, to our heart's content?
To our heart's content.
To our heart's content.
Yeah, yeah.
I get things like that messed up.
Yeah, you do.
And they had a tequila barrel rested gin
yeah.
that was amazing, and they made a margarita with it.
No, they made a French 75, but they called it a Mexican 75.
That's what it was. They made
Yeah.
they made a French 75, which is a gin and sparkling wine drink. We'll go into that another time when we have one. But tonight, this was our creation because this was tequila rested, tequila barrel rested. Excuse me. I don't want to get the phraseology wrong.
Correct.
I don't want somebody calling me out for saying it wrong. But it was amazing. We had this great idea. Okay, what if we make a take on a margarita with this tequila barrel rested gin? And so we made one. And
but because it's gin, it still had to be a martini.
Correct. So it's a take on a margarita.
Yeah, it's just inspired by a margarita.
So we took this take on a margarita and made it into a martini with this tequila barrel rested gin. That is a mouthful.
Yes, it is.
And then we turned it into our own drink that now doesn't even require tequila barrel rested gin anymore, although it is best with it. But without it, it is the Marg Thatcher, named after the wonderful Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, who also has a name that kind of sounds like a margarita.
Well, and because most gins, and this recipe works really well with a London Dry gin, and even the barrel rested gin that we had was a London Dry gin that was just barrel rested at that point. So it was kind of a twofold play on words.
Yeah, so we twofold plan.
Yep, twofold plan.
Just picked up what you're putting down. So we just got back from a trip to Fort Worth, actually, because we're in Austin. Our family is in Fort Worth, and we wanted to go see some family, hang out, do some Fort Worthian things and family things.
We totally did the whole college kid come back and crash at your parents' house type thing.
Yep, we totally did.
So we left our camper here, and there was some campers that we'd made friends with, and they offered to kind of help keep an eye on it. Plus we let the office know, so they helped keep an eye on it over the weekend. But yeah, we just crashed at your parents' house all weekend.
Yep, pulled a full college. If you are into the full-time RV life, if you are even near family, you're probably going to get that inevitable call of, hey, you're only a couple of hours away. Do you want to come up and hang out for the weekend? And you will inevitably say yes.
Yes, of course we do.
because your family, we love you, and we will do family things with you.
Correct. Correct. So yeah, it was fun. Although I'm I must say I'm a little out of practice packing a bag to travel because we carry everything with us all the time. And so
Yes.
I forgot a few things.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
She was blind on at least one day out of the 3 days because she forgot her contacts, she forgot her glasses, and she almost lost her prescription sunglasses. And
That's a theme.
there is a history of Kara and her sunglasses. They are scattered throughout the country in random places as she just loses them wherever she may go.
I do.
So she is restricted to the $20 or under sunglasses that you can get at CVS, Walgreens, or your closest Walmart.
Correct. Yeah, I do. I don't know why. I don't know why that's a thing. Like I can keep up with so many other things. Small things too, like tiny keys to different things and like my AirPods. I mean, AirPods are really difficult to keep track of. I can keep up with them no problem. My phone, I can keep up with it. No issue. My sunglasses, I lose them all the time without fail. Yes, they're all over the place.
They're in New Orleans, they're in the Atlantic Ocean, they're in New Jersey, someplace we'll be talking about here very soon.
I lost all three of those in like 3 or 4 weeks.
It was
Consecutively in 3 or 4 weeks' time. That was when we went from New Orleans to Florida. And then I think I had a business trip that took me up to New Jersey before we were ready to go up there because we went up there a couple months later. And over the course of like that 3 4 week period of time, I lost 3 different pairs of sunglasses.
it's insane. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Now, I will say, as far as the AirPods go, you never leave your house with the AirPods. You don't actually take them with you like I take my AirPods with me. Like
I do
you
too. I kept them in my backpack this time. They were with me the whole time. They
you
were in my
don't
backpack.
you don't go exploring with your AirPods in.
No, but I do with my sunglasses.
Yes.
I will note that I did find a bonus pair of sunglasses in our luggage when we got to your parents' house.
So apparently you lost one more than we even realized, and you happened to find one.
Correct. Does that cancel one of them out?
No, it cancels the one out that we didn't know you lost.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, the last two episodes were about RV tips and nothing but the tips. But this episode,
Nothing but the tips. Okay, you're funny. Keep going.
we wanted to talk about one of our one of I think we talk about it the most. One of our favorite places that we went to go hang out at, which was Philadelphia. I'll preface this real quick before we get into it. We went to Philadelphia. Our campground was in New Jersey.
Yeah, that's true. So that's kind of like one of the fun things though about RVing is all the different cool places that you get to go and the things that you get to do when you travel. And we hadn't really gotten into hardly any of that, and so we thought we would spend an episode just talking about one of the cool things that we got to do and one of the cool places that we got to go see.
Yeah, go see is kind of like a halvesy kind of thing here. So we'll get into how we got to Philadelphia here in a minute. But we went through a big effort to stay there for 2 weeks. And somebody threw their back out
Can't imagine who that person is.
the first week.
Yep.
The
no,
first weekend, I guess I should
the
say.
first weekend. And it was beautiful weather. So we were there for 2 weeks. First weekend, gorgeous weather. Second weekend, cold and rainy and miserable. And somebody who shall remain nameless.
Kara, the wandering RV babe,
Yeah,
who looks like she's 20.
yeah, I threw my back out. Totally. It was bad.
We were talking to one of our neighbors there at the campground, and I told him that my wife had thrown out her back, and he just kind of
He-
looks at me very blankly, like he was an older gentleman, older than us by a good 20 plus years. I think he might have referenced that he had a kid about our age. And
He did. He did. He had a kid that was like older than us.
and he just stares at me blankly like
Well, he saw
already.
Yeah, like he saw me off to the side, and at the time it felt better to stand. And so I was standing, and it felt really terrible to walk up the stairs, and I think at that moment we had just gotten back from the pharmacy getting me like a muscle relaxer and steroids and all kinds of things to like alleviate the pain and get me functioning again. And so I'm standing there just like waving, and he's like, "Really? She threw her back out? Really?" I'm like, "Yes, and I need help getting up the stairs. So while you're talking to him, I can't do anything. So I'm just gonna stand here and
Yeah,
wave."
I kept trying to abandon the conversation, and it was just like, okay, I need to go help my wife. Bye. Oh, okay, fine. I'm gonna give you one more tip. Teledoc and pharmacies. Teledoc is a great way to be able to have a doctor when you're full-time RVing, no matter where you're at,
We
and
love it.
they're able to change the pharmacy based off of where you're at. Now they do screw it up sometimes, so just be prepared that sometimes you may get to the pharmacy and be like, "Hey, can you transfer it to your pharmacy because this is actually where I'm at?" And so just be prepared for that. But that's just one tip. How did we get to Philadelphia?
That was an interesting story. So we were coming from Atlanta, and initially we had planned on like driving over the weekend, spending 1 week in North Carolina.
Yeah, I think North
I
Carolina.
think it was somewhere in North Carolina, and then getting up to Philly after that, and having literally one weekend to explore Philly.
Well, what I will say is you had another event come up that actually shortened. We were going to be in Philly two weeks originally.
Oh
It
yeah,
got shortened by a week because you had an event going on, and so we were going to stay. We were just staying in North Carolina just for the week for you to be able to work
right.
on our way up there. And it was like we're not going to have any time to really hang out in Philly at this point. So we're driving down the road, and you look at the map, and you're like, "Hey, it's only a 2 hour and 45 minute drive today."
Yeah, it was really, really short. And so we literally we're driving down the road. So we do the calculation, we look it up, and we're like, hey, it's gonna be kind of a miserable 2 days. But we could literally take these 2 days, make them into long road trip days, and get to Philly early and have a whole extra week in the area. And so we called the campground first, to make sure that they could actually get us a reservation and like extend our reservation out for a week and take us early. And they could. And so because of that, we ended up calling and canceling our North Carolina reservation. And we just grabbed like a Boondockers welcome that night in between, like Saturday, Sunday. And we arrived on Sunday. So we had like a whole extra week.
Actually, we did not grab a Boondockers welcome.
What did we grab?
It was like a KOA that was like converting to a Jellystone or a Jellystone that was converting to a KOA
Ah,
because we
yeah,
couldn't actually find a Boondockers welcome
that's
where
right.
we wanted it to be. It was going to either be too far north or too far south from where we wanted to be. And so we found this one campground. They had an opening for us, and it was like they were like, "Yeah, we're in the process of converting over. If you've got a KOA membership or Good Sam membership or whatever, we can take both at this point."
That's right. That's right. Yeah, because you're right. Because we got a really cool pull through site, which is nice because we didn't even have to unhitch the truck or anything. We pulled through, put the struts down, we slept for the night, and then we took off the next morning, which was great. And that was our longer day. Was the next day, so it helped immensely that everything was pretty much ready to go.
Yeah, I kind of have a set rule of generally 6 hours or under per day per the mapping application because it's usually going to take longer than that by the time we're filling up with gas, taking potty breaks, eating lunch, and everything that kind of goes into traveling. And so I kind of like 6 hours is kind of the max I normally like to set. I believe the first day was 8 hours. I think it ended up being about 10 hours actual travel time, and the next day was 9 hours on the map, which ended up being almost 12 hours of travel time.
Yeah, I would not recommend doing long days like that on a normal basis because it's a lot. It's way too much, especially 2 days in a row. It's a lot. But this time it worked out for us. Again, not something I would ever recommend, but this time it worked. And it's a good thing that it worked because we were supposed to have 2 weekends in Philly. We ended up only getting one because I hurt my back the first weekend. But I literally could not, I would not have been in shape to travel that weekend. So
No, it would have been
it would have
miserable,
been
and
bad.
so it really worked out. And we like to kind of give ourselves that extra breathing room when we're planning all of the travel and planning all the trips because things do change. Like I said, your business trip got changed, and so we had to cut our Philly trip short, and we were literally only going to be in North Carolina just for the purposes of you working Monday through Friday. So it was really nice to have that flexibility. But had those days been like like I said, I think they the first day especially was only like 2 hours and 45 minutes. Had I planned a full 5 or 6 hour day, we might not have been able to extend it enough to even get to Philly sooner. So because of that, it gave us some extra flexibility in the plan to be able to say, you know what, it's gonna suck, it's gonna be miserable, but we're going to go ahead and take 2 long days so we have extra time in Philadelphia, which really worked out because, like you said, we only really truly got one weekend, anyways.
Exactly. And not to knock anything in North Carolina, we actually do really want to go see North Carolina. We have several places that we want to visit North Carolina. If you know of anything that we should absolutely hit up, please let us know. But I will say, we didn't actually stay in Philadelphia or even in Pennsylvania at all.
Yeah, we stayed in New Jersey, and what I will say is when we crossed the border entering into New Jersey, I think on the south side of the state, not I think, I know, it was on the south side of the state.
You think?
I think,
You think?
maybe.
You drove it
I drove it.
several times.
So we entered on the south side of New Jersey, and we crossed over the bridge, and it turned into what I think most people imagine Texas looks like. I think maybe maybe 10 minutes after we crossed the bridge was a Western wear store, and then about another 5 minutes up the road was the local rodeo.
Yes, we were driving through, and I was like, who put Texas in my New Jersey? I don't understand. It looks just like you would imagine Texas would be as you're driving through it in the countryside of New Jersey. Now, I will say the only difference is we happened to arrive the week that the cherry blossoms were blooming, which was gorgeous, and that was the only thing that I was like, no, we're definitely not in Texas. But other than that, this particular section of New Jersey looks just like you would expect Texas or most places in the South to look.
Now, being a good old Texas boy, we got to the campground, and you're sitting here telling me I think those are cherry blossoms. I think it's starting to bloom, and I'm like not even really comprehending what you're trying to tell me. Like, you told me, you pointed in a direction. I was like, okay, I'm pulling my RV. I didn't really pay much attention. And then as we were there through the week, and as we made a couple of trips out of the campground, because I mean, it was there was one right at the entrance to the campground, and you kept pointing it out to me and pointing it out to me, and finally I'm like, oh, yeah, that went from being green to being really bright pink
Yeah, they're beautiful.
to by the time we left, there were like 1,500 of the little flowers on the ground covering everything.
Yeah, they only bloom for like I don't know if they do it any longer in the fall, but in the spring, which was when we were there, it was a week and a half max. So if you missed them during that week and a half, you don't get to see them again until they bloom again in the fall.
Now, my primary reason for wanting to go to Philadelphia really just comes back to one of my strongest love languages, food, and the ultimate competition of the Philly cheesesteak between Pat's and Gino's.
I totally thought you were going to say my love of American history. And I was going to say, yeah, and our love of Philly cheesesteak. And you like totally flipped it on its head. So so we'll get to the American history part in a minute. But keep going.
I do love American history. I do love me some good American history.
You do. That's why I thought that's where you were going to go with it. But
my
you didn't.
love
So go ahead.
language is food, though.
It's true. That's true.
So it was planned in advance. We were gonna go because Pat's and Gino's are right across the street from each other. We were gonna get one from Pat's, one from Gino's, and we were gonna split them, and we were gonna share them, and we were gonna decide which one we liked. Hey, babe. Which one do you like best?
So it's kind of too close to call. I can say that that particular trip, that particular visit, Pat's was my favorite. But the differences were so nuanced that I was like, man, maybe Gino's cook was having a rough day that day. Like, they were both really, really good.
Yeah, I think the main difference that I got between the two was Pat's meat was just a hair bit juicier
and more seasoned
than Gino's, which is something that can change a lot day to day depending on who's doing it,
right.
or maybe just based on how fresh the meat is that they got that day. But what I will say is I think Geno's had the better whiz.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's been a little bit, so I don't remember for sure, but they had different bread. And one of their, I don't remember which one. One of them had flakier bread and one of them had kind of chewier bread. And that I think is a personal preference. They were both great. They were both freshly baked that day, like you could tell. Everything was fresh and everything was really good. Hot tip, you do have to bring cash for both of them. They do not take credit card. So just keep that in mind. But I would highly recommend if you've never been to Pat's or Gino's, they're literally, like Ryan said, catty corner across the street from each other. Go walk over, buy one of each, and try them for yourself.
I think you'll find something that you'll like about each of them, and there's something to be said for whether you get it with all the mixing. What was the
With.
with? Yeah, it's just
It's with.
with, and that just means it's got all the stuff on it and whatever. I don't.
And Cheese Whiz. Because
Yes.
both of them now do like, I forgot if it was provolone or Swiss or something like that. Like they'll give that as an option. Don't do that. Do the original with Cheese Whiz. It's literally the best. I've never had Cheese Whiz better any other place other than Philly. Nobody else does it the same.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. So, going with the other great love that you wanted to point out, the American history. I know when I was a kid, I went to go see the Liberty Bell, but that's about all I remember. We wanted to go back. We wanted to go experience it all, including George Washington's war tent.
Yeah, which is in the Museum of the American Revolution.
Yes, it was really, really cool. And I think we spent probably, I want to say 2 or 3 hours maybe walking through that place.
We needed way more time.
We needed so much more time. There were so many things to do. We had a visit to Independence Hall. We went to go see the Liberty Bell again, and they've really pumped up that exhibit a whole lot since I was a kid. And there's a lot more that goes into it, and like what all the Liberty Bell has stood for, what all has been done with the Liberty Bell. It's very much more impactful. Now again, I was a kid. Maybe I just didn't read it all, but it seemed to have a lot more going on and talking about the full history and everything that that the Liberty Bell has experienced over its life.
Now, Independence Hall was a bit of a surprise in more ways than one.
Okay, tell me why.
Okay, so the first one, which I think anybody who's been to Independence Hall can probably agree with me, is it's small. It's way smaller than I would have imagined the founding of our country to be. Like you walk into Independence Hall and there's like 2 rooms, and that's it. And so it's pretty small. They have some other areas where you can see more things, but it just is very. It's a very
Quaint.
humble and quaint environment, and not something that you would have kind of imagined as like this grandiose place where our country would have been born at. And so it was very humbling. It was humbling to walk in there. It was humbling to see kind of where things began and what they were working with there.
Yeah, you think about this is where they were writing.
The Articles of Confederation
Yeah,
and
all these
the
things, and you think about like
Declaration of Independence.
the Senate and the House of Representatives meet now and the enormity of those buildings. These people were writing laws the same way in this small little room with tables that were wide enough for 2 people to sit at, yet they had like 4 or 5 per table, and they're all sitting here working through all of this, talking through all of it, and then across the hallway is like a little courtroom essentially. Now they did say that a lot of this was recreation based off of what they could tell. They had not all the chairs had survived, but they had a few, and so they had an idea of how some of it was assembled. They have certain paintings that they use to kind of give an idea. The dimensions of the rooms, though, and the amount of people that they were fitting in each of these rooms was not different. They know how many. The rooms were what they were. They just had to kind of artfully recreate it as best they could. So you kind of walk in and you're like, is this just like a look at what might have been, and they kind of miniaturized just to give you space? No, the space is what it is, and the number of people who were in there is how many were in there. It's just they'll just tell you like, yeah, we had to, not all of this is 100% accurate.
Yeah. But fun fact, Independence Day is actually on July 3rd. Tell that to your friends and family next July 4th.
I'm shooting my fireworks on July 3rd from now on. Yeah, we declared independence on July 3rd,
Yeah, they signed it and ratified it on July 3rd.
and then on July 4th is when all the newspapers got it out to everyone, so everyone knew that we had declared independence. So July 4th is the day that the rest of the country found out that we had declared independence.
Yeah, it was funny because they were saying that there was one of our founding fathers, I forget which one, but one of them, and if you go to Independence Hall, you will see the plaque that says it, that he said something like July 3rd will be a day that will go down in the history books. And it was really funny because, the newspapers would always print today's date on the very top in really big writing. And so they printed July 4th as the date that it was published. And then they just printed the whole Declaration of Independence as their newspaper publication because that's how they were able to get the word out. And so that's why that's become so famous and why we celebrated on July 4th. But we actually declared independence the day before.
So stick that in your firecracker and light it.
Okay. Um, um, that was good. That was good. All right. So that was the first surprising thing about Independence Hall. Humble beginnings. Second surprising thing was, and I know that this was so connected to like the COVID situation and heightened security and all of the things, but it was freaking freezing when we were there. It was cold, it was rainy, and it was windy that day. And they told us on the tickets, they were like, hey, arrive an hour beforehand to get through the security line before your tour. So we did. And they had some sort of a malfunction. They were literally like, we were walking through metal detectors and having to put all of our like belongings and bags and things like that through this like it looked like you were going through TSA to get into Independence Hall, which I thought was hysterical because they didn't do that same thing at the Liberty Bell or any of the other places. It was just Independence Hall that they had this whole like heightened security at, and I don't know why, but because of COVID, they were separating everybody out, so they would only let certain groups through at a time, and then their computer system like, crashed or something like that. So we were literally standing there for hours, and we finally get through. Of course, we by that point missed our tour time, and they had to kind of squeeze us into the next tour, which I appreciate that they did. But that was interesting to me because it was like, really?
I think they did do it at the Liberty Bell. They just didn't have anything crash, and so it was like a nice, smooth process.
Oh, maybe so.
Yeah,
Maybe so. Maybe it was a smooth process there, and it was not a smooth process at Independence Hall. But it was freaking freezing.
it was very cold.
It was so cold. But we did go over. So there is this cute little tavern, very very popular, called Red Owl Tavern. You can literally see Independence Hall from it. It's right across the street, kind of catty corner across the street. They had a great little brunch and they had great little drinks. And we were able to get in, kind of warm up, grab some drinks, grab some food, and it was right over there. They primarily work off of reservations, so I would highly recommend a reservation. But they had a couple seats open at the bar when we walked in, and so we were able to snag those, and they were really really tasty.
It was very good. Very a huge shout out to them. Now, the other big thing we did while we were there is the Eastern State Penitentiary. This was I w- as a history sort of buff. I'm more of like American history, like kind of let's say war history. I'm more of like a war history buff. And so I wasn't necessarily inclined. I was like, yeah, sure, we'll go to the penitentiary. We'll check it out. No big deal. If we get bored, whatever, we'll move on, go eat dinner, yada, yada, yada. But it ended up being really, really cool. It was a self guided tour. And this is one of the early penitentiaries in America and kind of the new standard that they were going off of for a long time of how a penitentiary should be run. And oh, by the way, they served alcohol.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we actually went. They do daytime tours, but during seasonally they will do evening tours as well. So it's kind of a they may do a ghost tour. I'm not sure. This wasn't positioned that way. It wasn't teed up that way, but it was kind of a like come for quote unquote happy hour, which was kind of a cool concept. And the architect of Eastern State Penitentiary was the one who revolutionized how all modern penitentiaries are run across the world. So it was really, really cool, both from an architectural perspective as well as from a historical perspective. I know Al Capone spent some time there. They had a story on that. They had other stories on other inmates
I got to
there.
walk into Al Capone's cell.
You did. You did. It was really, really interesting to see. And then they talked about how the history had evolved because this was an active penitentiary until like the mid 70s. So they talked about the evolution in the history of just that era and how just penitentiaries and the prison culture evolved. It was very, very intriguing, very interesting, and the cool thing again was it was completely self-guided. So there were tour guides around. There was a headset that you put on with a recorder, so you could hear the stories and you could just kind of guide yourself. But then you could roam around, and then in the center of it, they had what used to be the play yard for the inmates, and they had like a whole pop-up area for just grabbing a beer, being able to kind of casually sit down. You got a lot more information about today's modern penitentiary system and just some of the pros and cons to it, as well as you got a chance to just kind of walk around and get to learn some history and be able to have a beer in your hand, which was really kind of nice.
Yeah. So, Kara,
Hmm.
you've been developing a little bit of a pet peeve over the last year. Would you tell our wonderful friends out there in the Potiverse?
And the Potiverse? That's fun. I like it. It makes me think of something that Harry Potter would say. Like it would be something in Harry Potter. The Potiverse.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I'm all in for Harry Potter, but yeah, I can see where that may be. So, would you tell our friends in the Pod universe
I liked Potiverse better.
what your new pet peeve is?
What in context to what?
Camping?
Oh, that one.
Yes, that one.
Oh, fucking Caplights. I hate Caplights. They're terrible. They're awful. Fucking Caplights. And the people that leave them on all the time.
It took one sentence for three bleeps to come out.
Sorry. I feel very passionate about this.
So, for those who don't know, the cap light is a light that you can turn on. It's mostly decorative towards the front of the RV.
It's only on pull behinds and fifth wheels. It is not going to be on a Class A, typically.
Nope, that is not true at all.
Okay, scratch that.
The look a little bit different on motorhomes because sometimes they're like cued in with the headlights and stuff, but they're still not actually headlights because they're usually colored in some way, shape, or form to kind of match the aesthetic of the RV. So in theory, I think the idea would be that you can have it on, have like a string of lights on your canopy, and or a string of you can have a string of lights on your
Awning?
awning. You can have a string of lights on your awning, and you can create like this very colorful and decorative setup, and it's all really, really cool. And you turn that light on when you're hanging out outside so you can kind of see what you're doing, especially in the evenings. All these wonderful, beautiful things that you can do with a cap light. The problem that Kara is trying to explain, but her own brain can't quite comprehend, is that there are a few people out there
Fucking Caplights.
who impolitely leave their cap lights on when they're not outside enjoying their own view, when they're not at their campsite sometimes, overnight.
Here's the thing. What Ryan was so eloquently trying to say is the actual use for a cap light is exactly like a headlight. It is for if you are trying to pull into a campsite at night and you're trying to hitch or unhitch your trailer if it's a fifth wheel or a travel trailer at night and you need to be able to see. And then yes, some people do use them decoratively for outdoor lighting when they're out there sitting outside and having a good time. But don't leave them on all fucking night long because inevitably your cap light, which is the equivalent of a headlight being turned on all night long, is going to be blaring right into some neighbor that is across from you. And usually it's going into their bedroom window or their living room window or something like that, where it's very disturbing and very distracting all night long. And we've been to so many campsites where people leave their cap lights on all night long and it literally peers into my bedroom window. And you might say, well, just close the shades. Hold up. Shades in an RV are not like shades in a home where it literally can block out all of the light. There is still light that will peer through on the sides and the bottom. And if it's literally right there at your bed, which ours are and many are, then no, there's not a way to fully block out that light. And it
Also,
is really annoying.
if you're RVing, that means you want to be close to the outside, and so one of those things is being able to enjoy having your windows open and enjoying the wonderful view, and maybe even just waking up with the sunset in the morning.
Sunrise in the morning?
Waking up with the sunrise in the morning.
Yes, exactly. It's amazing how a small light will just totally wash out all of the stars that are in the area, and a really bright light will wash them out a ton. And guess what? A cap light is a really bright light.
So I'm going to throw out one really useful scenario where maybe would have helped for us to have our cap light on.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Well, we're in Pennsylvania. Somebody, who shall yet to be named, was running an errand in the evening.
I feel like this episode is really dogging on me. There's really some stories that are coming out on me. We're going to have to think of some stories. And, like, next episode, there's going to be some Ryan stories. Don't know what they are yet. But there are going to be some Ryan stories.
So somebody was out running some errands.
Yes.
And this was while we were in Philadelphia. I'm just talking about our you wanted you did actually write, the podcast doc. So
I did.
So this
I
is
did
kind
write
of
the doc. It is totally my fault. You're teeing it up. I'm okay with it. Continue.
So Kara was running some errands and she came back home in the evening. It was like maybe 7:30, 8 o'clock.
It was dark.
It was
dark.
dark. It was dark outside. And she goes to back the truck into our little parking space in front of our RV.
I was so proud of myself. I backed in.
You did. Right into the kingpin.
I did. Yeah. Here's the thing, though. It was very gently. I didn't hear it or feel it.
And luckily, you missed everything important on the back of the truck. You didn't hit the camera. You didn't hit the handle for the tailgate or anything. Everything was still functional. So it really wasn't a big deal. It didn't. I think it bothered you more than it bothered me.
Oh, I was terrified. I was so upset that I hit it, and I realized it when I got out, and I went to go around the backside, and I was like, oh shit, like I saw it, and I know, I'm sorry. And you said that this was gonna be a non-cussing podcast, but you married somebody who cusses like a sailor. It's just part of it. Ryan is gonna have to spend a lot more time editing this episode to bleep all that out. But I called you and I was so upset. I called you and I was about to come pick you up. And I was like, I'm really sorry. I just damaged your truck. And you were like, okay. It was bound to happen.
Stuff happens.
Yeah. I was so thankful. Okay, drink break. I like drink breaks. Drink break. I like drink breaks. Drink breaks are fun. So we have a fan question from this week, and that is, what do you do when there's a hurricane or a tornado? That's actually a really timely question.
Yeah, there's some campgrounds that got hit real hard on the west side of Florida, and of course our prayers and our hopes and thoughts go out to everyone there as they are recovering, and we really hope that everyone is as safe as they can be. And we hope that a lot of these campgrounds are able to get back up and running and start making some money again, so that way people's livelihoods are not affected by this. But the question is, what do you do in those situations? And honestly, I think it goes back to what we talked about a few episodes ago, and it's about watching the weather real closely in advance and just knowing as much as you can what's coming your way. Obviously, if you can get if you have an inkling that something's headed your direction, if you can pack up, get everything in the RV and head away. Head towards safety, drive away if there is time.
Yeah.
And so that is going to be my first recommendation, is head towards safety as soon as you know, if you've got enough time, but do not create a bad situation by doing it last minute. If you get into that situation and you don't know that it's coming, or it comes on sooner than expected, or maybe in the case of like what happened in Florida, it doesn't quite hit land where everyone was expecting it to, then really and truly, honestly, your best thing to do is take your family, your animals, take only what you can carry, and go to the safest place, the most structured place in the campground. Most campgrounds, especially ones that are in areas where hurricanes and tornadoes happen, will have a designated tornado shelter. Things can be replaced with insurance, and it's going to suck, it's going to be miserable, but things can be replaced. The most important thing to worry about is you and your family's safety, and your animals who rely on you for safety because they don't know any better. Take care of those things first.
As much as you might think, oh, we have everything all here together, we can just pick up and go really quickly. There is no picking up and going really quickly when you're in an RV. It takes time to break everything down. It takes time to get everything ready to get on the road and to get everything unhitched from being on the road. That is not something that you can just do in a few minutes. And so don't kid yourself. The other thing is, don't try to write it out in your camper. It's not a sticks and bricks home. This is aluminum and plywood on wheels. That's it. It's very susceptible to movement, it's very susceptible to high winds. And even if it's stationary, even if you have everything really secure and you have chocks and blocks and all kinds of stabilizers down, it's not going to behave the same way as a fortified, what we call a sticks and bricks structure. So, yeah, like Ryan said, every campground is going to have a storm shelter. A lot of times that's going to be like the laundry facilities or the bathroom facilities. Know where that is and keep an eye on the weather.
Yeah, and I think that's honestly the best you can do. And like I said, just make your priority taking care of your family.
Yeah. And the other thing I think that you have to be aware of is if you're planning to go someplace that has been hit by a hurricane or tornado, even if you have reservations, go ahead and call them. Not right after it happens, like they're probably picking up some pieces and trying to kind of get things together, but call them ahead of your reservations. Just make sure everything's still okay for you to come. We ran into that a little bit when we went to New Orleans. And obviously, Florida just got hit. That's one of our favorite places to go. That's something that we're keeping an eye on there as well. That you just need to be aware of how they're doing, and if you have favorite campsites that you want to go to, call them, check on them, see how they're doing, see if there's anything that you can do to help, but also check on your reservations if you have reservations coming up.
And the other thing I'll say is just keep an eye on the weather. I think it's one of the most important things that you can do as a camper. Whether you're going for a weekend trip or you're full timing it, just keep an eye on the weather. Whether you're driving in high winds or there's a storm coming your way, it's just good to know. We were expecting to have rain tonight. We were real excited. We actually kind of planned to record the podcast tonight, expecting to have that rainfall just kind of lightly puttering across the top of our camper because it sounds amazing, and I didn't know how well it was going to even pick up on the microphones, anyways. But it's one of our most beautiful things, and so I'm sure we'll get a chance to do another podcast in the rain, and you'll get to hear just the wonderful little putters of raindrops going on across the ceiling. Weather can be beautiful, weather can also be scary, so just do your best to keep an eye on what's happening so you can make plans. And that's honestly it.
So, hey, friends, thanks so much for listening again to our brand new podcast. We love you. We would love to stay connected to you. So, follow us on Instagram at WanderingRVBabe or email us to stay connected at podcast@wanderingrvbabe.com. We'll see you next time.
You guys take care of yourselves and stay safe.
Jersey drivers.
I know it always comes up as like, where are the worst drivers? And I'm like, I've been to New York. I drove through Manhattan. I drove through Brooklyn with a 1-ton truck. And what I will say is the worst drivers I ran into in New York were all Jersey drivers.
Jersey drivers, and the entire time that we were in Jersey,
oh, they were horrible.
they were terrible. They
were
would cut you off. They would flip you off for no reason. They like they were terrible, terrible drivers. It was awful.
You know, growing up in DFW, I just imagine like the amount of energy that goes into people just speeding around everywhere, and it's so annoying, it's so frustrating, but it is nowhere near as bad as being near a Jersey driver who just gives zero cares about what you're doing or what you're towing.